Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the third episode in which Uzumaki Naruto and his team time travel to the past. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to the author's profile. If you have their profile, DM me on Discord. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. It was to a bright and sunny day that Team 7 gathered once more at Training Ground 3. Each was eager to see their team reunited, so naturally with their meeting set for 8 in the morning, they all got there at 11. Sensei. Welcome back. Sakura called brightly as he approached the waiting trio. Naruto was radiating excitement and Sasuke leaned calmly against the nearby tree. It's about time, said the blonde. I don't know what I'd have done with even more free time. Seriously, he used his 2 weeks to support a coup. Imagine if he'd had a month. Hello my cute genin, Kakashi said with a smile, raising a hand in greeting as he tucked away his little orange book. You all look well. We powered up Kakashi-sensei. Naruto boasted, nodding smugly. You wouldn't believe how good we are. You'd be surprised, apparently you're the talk of my fellow jonin, the copy ninja said. You've left quite the impression while I was gone. She's not still at the bar, is she? Sasuke said with a sigh, to which Kakashi shrugged. Head hung, the Uchiha made a single shadow clone who walked back to the village proper. Don't ask, he added to his teammates' confusion. Right. Anyway, sensei, how was your mission? Easiest S rank I've ever gotten, Kakashi said nonchalantly. Well that's good, we can't have a pushover for a sensei, Naruto said seriously, nodding repeatedly, only to find himself buried in the dirt up to his neck a moment later. Okay, I'll stop. Kakashi-sensei, now that you're back you said you would show us something nice, Sakura said, never one to forget a conversation. Of course none of them had forgotten. It was one of the reasons they'd made sure to have something new to show. Free training was hard to pass up, particularly when you were looking for any excuse to act a little less like a weak genin. Or a strong genin for that matter. If you show me something first, the jonin countered. He stretched before taking a seat on one of the training posts. Let's see what you've got. Sakura, would you like to go first? Sure. Sakura moved to the front as the other two genin took seats as well. You all know one of my biggest strengths is my chakra control, she began, getting nods from the three of them. I want to use that to its fullest, and also help my team. So on my own I've been looking into medical jutsu. Whoa, that's awesome! Naruto exclaimed. If anyone could do that you could. Sakura smiled at him. He really looked blown away at the idea. He's so sweet. You're saying you learned some healing medjutsu? Sasuke said, eyebrows raised. No, she said, giving him an odd look. Did he think she was some kind of super genius to just figure that stuff out on her own? I'll need a teacher to learn medical jutsu. Mom said most mednin train for years before they're allowed to go into the field. Years and years that I really hopefully can cut down this time. Stupid fish training. Right. Anyway, Sakura continued. Since I'm still looking for someone to teach me, I've just been coming up with all sorts of ways to strengthen my chakra control, and I found something neat while experimenting. She held up her demonstration, a small stone, between her thumb and first finger. And crushed it. It's actually pretty hard, she continued, pulling out a slightly larger stone from her pocket and holding it out in her palm. Like I'm pushing and pulling at the same time? It's pinpoint but also everywhere, and then there's this little snap, she offered in thought, crushing the rock into fragments and stone dust. She dusted her hands and looked up to find all three members of her audience watching her from a considerably larger distance than earlier with slightly pale faces. Kakashi pulled his forehead protector back over his Sharingan eye, having watched the demonstration with it. I've only ever seen one other person who could do that. You're becoming a scary kunoichi, Sakura," he said finally. "Did I pass, Kakashi-sensei?" she asked. When he nodded, she held up 2 fingers in AV, sticking out her tongue at her teammates. "Top that, Shinaru." Only to clap both hands over her mouth in horror. "No. I got rid of that years ago." "Why?" It didn't help that Naruto was openly laughing, Kakashi was chuckling, and Sasuke was clearly hiding a grin. Eyelid twitching, she walked over to Sasuke and tossed him to the front, taking his seat. "Your turn, Broody." "Yes, Hem," Kakashi cleared his throat. "What do you have to show us?" "Just these," he said coolly, dusting himself off and pointing to his eyes. Instead of their usual color, they were a blood red with 3 tomo in each. Sharingan. Sakura shot up from her seat, annoyance long gone. Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" "What do you mean?" Sasuke asked in confusion, taking in the reactions of the other 2. Kakashi looked like he'd expected it, while Naruto looked contemplative. What was he thinking about? When we studied dojutsu in the academy, one of the things I read was that it usually takes trauma to have one." A hollow laugh filled the training ground, and it took a second for Sasuke to realize it was coming from him. It would be just like Sakura to have read something like that. "Sorry. That's more accurate than it isn't," he admitted. "To be honest, I've had these for years, I've just been improving them. You can probably guess when I got them. That should keep anyone from prying too much. Anyway, sensei, is that good or do I need more?" "Well, technically you cheated, but I'll let it slide," the Jonin said with a shrug. "Now that I know you have your eyes, we can talk about it later. I may not be an Uchiha, but I do know a thing or two." "Naruto? Got something that tops the Sharingan or super strength?" he joked. "Just these." 2 golden chains wrapped around Kakashi, pinning his arms to his side. All eyes, as wide as they could go, followed them to the hands of their creator, who stood with a smirk on his face. Sakura was the first to break. "Okay, I'm sorry, excuse me." "What the fuck is that?" "Kushina-senpai's chains?" Kakashi squeaked. "Is this what you meant by upping your Uzumaki?" Sasuke said slowly. His eyes, still with active Sharingan, were taking in the very, very dense chakra that was in those chains. "That's right," Naruto said with a defiant grin. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki and the world will know it." The chains dissipated and suddenly the Naruto they were used to was back. "But yeah, when I showed Hokage GG, he said that this was something my mom used to be able to do, and now me too. It's cool, right?" "Cool," he says. Sakura sighed with a smile. For all his incredible skill, this Naruto was still a Naruto through and through. "Are they hard to use?" "Mostly, yeah," Naruto affirmed, turning slightly to the side to show a number of chains that had poked through his clothing at his lower back. "It's easier to use them like a tail though. Isn't that weird?" "No, not at all," chorused the other members of Team 7, shaking their heads. The blonde grinned at the group and dispersed the remaining chains, slapping a hand to his face as he took in the holes in the back of his jumpsuit. "Son of a, anyway, I don't know if it's better than what they did, to be honest," he said, scratching his chin. "GG's being difficult about telling me what my mom could do with them." "Fair enough," Sasuke said, not about to argue. Not with the genin who'd pulled what Karen had called the Uzumaki's unofficial Kekii Genkai out of his ass. "Ceiling," Kakashi answered in a monotone, deadpanning at the blonde. "Offense, defense, hanging people upside down by their ankles, whipping at you because you aren't completing your obstacle course fast enough, trying to choke you because the user had anger issues and liked to take out her frustrations on children." Sensei, are you okay?" "What?" Kakashi blinked and looked around at the 3 genin who were regarding him apprehensively. He smiled warmly at them. "Oh, I'm fine, just being a bit nostalgic." That is not the right use for that word, sensei. So, Kakashi-sensei. You pass, you pass. Please stop doing things that break my hold on reality, he said, waving away their words with a hand. Now, come here. Kakashi beckoned them all over and held up a square piece of paper the genin recognized well. Here's your reward. You're all too advanced not to know your chakra affinities. If you don't already, he added as an afterthought. After we see what you all have, I'll teach you a couple jutsu for each. This should improve the team's level by quite a bit. Any guesses? Fire, for sure, said Sasuke confidently. Everyone in my clan had fire. Earth jutsu come pretty easy for me, Sakura offered. I have no idea what you're talking about, said Naruto with a hapless grin. Naruto. While Sakura launched into a simplified explanation of chakra elements, Sasuke took a moment to pray that nothing weird happened in the next few moments. Who knew how this version of Sakura and Naruto would end up, but he at the very least had experience using quite a few extreme powers. He hadn't used the chakra paper in a very long time and now he was getting a bit nervous. If it looks like anything crazy I'll just torch it. Oh, Naruto said with a nod, placing a fist in his open palm. That makes sense, but I don't know why people use so many big words for stuff. But I only used small words on purpose. Sakura deadpanned. Kakashi intervened before the conversation could continue any further. Well then, with that out of the way, let's see how our team is balanced. Push some chakra into one of these please. The three genin each took a piece of chakra paper, leaving Kakashi with one, and as a group channeled chakra into each. Sasuke's paper became wrinkled before catching fire. Sakura's paper became dusty and crumbled away. Naruto's paper split in half before each piece became damp. Kakashi's paper became wrinkled. Interesting, said the Jonin, looking between the three genin. It seems we have all the base elements covered. Even wind. That's pretty rare in this village. Water? No one said it, but for the three genin, they were all thinking it. There was an additional element there that shouldn't have been. Mom. You had a water affinity, didn't you? Naruto thought with realization. First the chains and then this. This will help the team deal with any opponent, said Sasuke in satisfaction. We'll also be able to do combination attacks and maneuvers. One thing at a time, Sasuke, Kakashi said with a smile, though they all knew he was thinking the same thing. For now though, we're going for a walk while I talk to you about something. Come on. With that he pulled out his little orange book and started walking back to the village proper. The three genin exchanged confused looks before jogging to catch up to the masked Jonin. You said there was something you wanted to talk to us about? Naruto asked as they reached him. Yes, this year's Chunin exam is coming up and I'll pass, interrupted Sasuke, shaking his head. I want to train much more before I might need to shoulder greater responsibilities. Sasuke has a point, said Sakura with a thoughtful frown. We've only been genin for a little while. It would make more sense to train under Kakashi-sensei for as much as we can, we'll only come out of it stronger. I do want to do it. Naruto said with his eyes closed, but you guys are right. Besides, if any of us became Chunin we'd probably not be able to team up anymore. At least not as easily. That was the last thing any of them wanted. Become Chunin? Kakashi looked at them in confusion before realization crossed his face. Oh I see, you thought I was going to recommend Team 7 for the Chunin exams. You three aren't taking the Chunin exams. What? Do you practice that? The Jonin grumbled, wincing at the volume as he dug a pinky in his ear. And what's the problem, you all just agreed you don't want to take them. What do you mean we aren't taking the Chunin exams? Sakura repeated, ignoring the comment. You don't want us to? She hated the hurt in her voice that she knew was there, even if the others didn't. Did Kakashi really not think that they could handle it despite how strong the team was this time? Despite what she'd put into her time as a genin once again? To be honest, I agree with all three of you, the Jonin explained, smiling at her kindly. It might be a bit selfish of me, but despite how strong you all are, I'd rather keep you as my genin for a bit longer. Great, now her eyes were stinging. More importantly, Team 7 has a mission that will be happening during the exam. We do? Naruto squinted at his sensei in confusion. Wasn't the exam still around a month away? Missions weren't usually planned ahead like that, especially for genin. Yes, we're meeting the Hokage for the briefing. When? Asked Sasuke. Right now. The feeling of being carried on another's back is one not easily forgotten, no matter how infrequently it has happened over an individual's life. For Kurenai, who never let another person get close enough to touch her in general, unless wanted, of course, it was a distinctly odd feeling to wake up to. She reacted as any trained kunoichi would, moving to at minimum incapacitate whoever was carrying her, but froze as a familiar voice addressed her. Relax, it's me. Oh. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't knock you out and leave you face down in a river. Because his hands were definitely hooked under her, but to keep her aloft as they moved through the village streets. Well, I'm a clone, so if you try you'll get dumped on the ground. Besides, I'm the one who has everyone around us in a genjutsu, so they won't see a genin carrying a jonin home from the bar she spent the night at. Admittedly, it was a very good reason, though she might have still hit him if he weren't a clone. Also, she had a savage hangover. Shouldn't you be with your team? He continued to ask her, apparently unconcerned with their positions. Shouldn't you be with yours? She countered, allowing her chin to rest on his shoulder. Holding it upright was just making the throbbing worse, and he was being remarkably light on his feet. She could barely tell he was walking in the first place. I am with my team, he said. Clone, remember? Well? Kurenai let out a grunt of annoyance and took in the oblivious people they were walking past. It was an impressive genjutsu. I gave them the day off so I could sulk in peace. You're ruining that plan, by the way. Why did you come to me for genjutsu help if you're this good already? She said in annoyance. You don't need me at all. I'm not looking to be good at genjutsu, Sasuke said with a snort of amusement. My brother is possibly one of the best genjutsu users in the world, and you get compared to him. Frequently. That's the level I'm trying to reach, and nothing below that is acceptable. He angled his face just enough so she caught sight of his bright Sharingan eyes. For that you are needed. Kurenai turned away, watching the villagers once more. Whatever. Make me a bath, would you? We can talk about genjutsu when I feel human again. She didn't see it, but she could hear the slight grin in his voice. Hi, Yuhi-sama. Stupid Uchiha brat. Team 7, it's nice to see you all together once again. Sakura tried not to fidget as the Hokage smiled at them from behind his desk. It wasn't that she got nervous being near a Hokage. Training under Tsunade ripped off that band-aid with all the subtlety of a Shinra tensei. It was just that she'd never really spoken directly with the man who'd lost his life during her first Chunin exam. He'd visited the academy frequently over the course of her life, and she'd greeted him frequently at the mission counter, but she'd never been the focus like she was now. Hi, Hokage-sama. GG, you have a mission for us? Naruto blurted, never the patient one. What about the exam? Think you're ready to become Chunin, do you? The Sandaime asked with a smile. What about your teammates? They're totally good enough, Naruto said without hesitation. As I understand it though, none of you are interested in competing. The three genin looked at Kakashi, who shrugged. GG, are you spying on people with that ball again? Naruto accused. Don't be silly, the Hokage laughed, not so subtly pushing the bottom drawer of his desk closed with a foot. In any case, I apologize if this disrupts your hopes surrounding the upcoming Chunin exam, but the village has need of Team 7 for the duration of the event. So we really won't be entering, said Sasuke, frowning as he considered the repercussions of this. It was one thing to not join the exam but be around for the fallout. It was another thing entirely to be out on a mission and miss the invasion. I never said that, the Hokage said, leaning back in his seat. On the contrary, your mission is the Chunin exam. What do you mean? Asked Sakura as the boys looked at him in confusion. Kakashi, for once, waited patiently without looking for something to read. The Hokage looked around briefly, and the three could tell that the on-duty ANBU hidden around the room had retreated to give them privacy. Before I begin the briefing, understand that this mission is a matter of utmost secrecy. Only the people in this room will know the details of your mission. Hi, Hokage-sama, the three chorused, feeling the shift in tone the man used. Good. We have reason to believe that the village will be attacked at some point during the exam, the Sandaime explained, earning himself wide-eyed expressions from all three genin. Chunin exams have always been traditionally times of vulnerability in whichever village is hosting. Add to that fact our relationships with IWA, Kyumo, and Kiri have been tenuous over the past decade, and as a result we've typically only seen genin teams attending from our allies, Suna and other much smaller lands near our borders. His expression shifted to a frown. This has recently changed. The Sandaime leaned back in his seat, crossing his hands out of what could only be habit as he continued to address them. Thanks to intel brought by Sakura and Team 10 from their last mission to Nami, as well as recent developments, we know that Kiri's civil war has come to a close with a new Mizukage taking the seat. She has recently messaged us her intention to send a single team to our Chunin exams. Be it one team or 20, this means that another Kage will join me in watching the final event of the exam, as well as other guests who travel to watch them compete. They're weak, Sasuke said, drawing everyone's attention to him. They're probably looking for some kind of alliance until they recover from so much infighting. Yes, the Hokage said with a thoughtful expression. I agree, this is more than likely the Mizukage's aim. Mei Terumi has always been known for her leadership skills and dedication to her people. That said, we can't discount that she led the coup against the previous Mizukage. War is in her blood and we cannot discount the threat she brings. The Hokage moved aside a small stack of papers to expose a folder with a symbol the three instantly recognized printed on the front. A new shinobi village, Otogakure, has established itself recently and is looking to send a team to the exam. We are awaiting more intel about them, but they have grown too fast for there to not be something more to them. Additionally, in my recent attempts to communicate with the Kazekage, the exchanges have felt off. Their daimyo has also sent many missions to the Land of Fire in the past year. This is problematic. So what do you want us to do? Asked Naruto. Internally his mind was a jumble. He didn't want his GG to die. The old man had done so much for him over the years where no one else would, and even though it was mainly because he was the village Jinchuriki, it didn't take away the bond they shared. It was nearly painful to find out that the old man had actually known that something was up before the exam started. That even after realizing Orochimaru was behind it all, he would still rather face his death if it meant confronting his old student once more. Pushing back in his seat, the Hokage stood. Against the brightly lit village the old man cut a sharp and dark silhouette. You three will infiltrate the Chunin exam as a competing genin team, while simultaneously keeping tabs on persons of interest. The Sandaime tapped a folder on his desk briefly. There will be multiple times throughout the event that we cannot intervene without it reflecting poorly on the village as a whole or at worst spark war. The genin candidates in particular are untouchable to each other, however. Chunin exams have never been known to be particularly peaceful. Well, that was one way of putting it. What about Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked, looking over at the Jonin. You'll report to me, but otherwise I'll be unavailable, he said. As for who leads the mission, Sasuke should lead. Sakura should lead. Naruto should lead. Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke exchanged blinking looks as they all pointed to someone different. Sasuke stays the calmest in bad situations, said Sakura, defending her choice. You have the best strategies by far, Naruto countered, doing the same. And you are the best at dealing with people, Sasuke interjected, pointing to the blonde. All fair points, Kakashi said, his mask hiding his smile, which is why I will let you three decide your chain of command for the mission as you've been doing. Alright, I guess we can talk about it later, said Sasuke, the other two shrugging in agreement. What information do we have for the mission? As much as we have on the teams I want you to be keeping tabs on, answered the Hokage. So the team from Kiri, the team from Oto, and one of the teams from Suna is made up of the Kazekage's children. I would like you to target them. Understood. What about the exam? You won't be provided anything directly about the structure of the exam simply so you can experience it as genuinely as possible. It goes without saying that you will need to make it all the way to the end, so failing any portion of the exam is equivalent to failing this mission. Yeah, that makes sense, Naruto said with a sigh. Sure, he knew what was coming up, but it would be cool to be told before anyway. If that is all the questions you have, then you're dismissed. Kakashi will deliver the intel we've gathered at a later date. Keep an eye out over the next month as the village gets more and more visitors. Though the Chunin exam is a month away, your mission starts now. As they made to leave, Sakura and Sasuke noticed one member of the team who still stood facing the Hokage's desk. I'll catch up, I want to talk to Gigi about something, Naruto said, only barely meeting their gazes over his shoulder. It's gotta be the fox, the two thought. Alright, we'll be back at our training ground working on new techniques, said Kakashi, nose already buried in his book. The door soon shut behind them, leaving the Hokage and Genin alone. Silence stretched for a minute before either spoke. Gigi, you said you'd help me with the Kyuubi. Of course. You will have it soon, the old man said reassuringly. We've just been waiting for the right person to be available. Sorry, I just don't like waiting. I know, the Hokage chuckled. He waited for a few moments before continuing. One of the reasons you are targeting the Kazekage's children is that one of them is almost certainly a host like yourself. Silence followed this as Naruto looked down at his hands. Do you think we could become friends? A moment of surprise passed over the Hokage's face before it was replaced by an expression of far too many emotions to properly read. Jinchuriki are almost universally feared by the people they protect. They all without question go through hardship few can begin to understand. That said, if anyone can, I believe it would be you, Naruto, he said, his voice belying the unwavering confidence he had in the blonde genin. You've recently shown me your maturity, and despite everything you've experienced you've grown up well. Your parents would be proud of you, as I am. It was like having sunshine directly injected into his bloodstream. Thanks, Gigi, he said in embarrassment, rubbing the back of his head. Anyway, I should get back to my team. And stop peeping on people with that thing, he called over his shoulder as he dashed from the room. Hiruzen Sarutobi gave a great sigh as he leaned back in his seat, his eyes falling on the distant stone face of the fourth Hokage. You really would be proud, Minato. You really would be. Naruto walked at a sedate pace as he made his way back to Training Ground 3, hands behind his head, eyes on the clouds that drifted aimlessly above. He was eager to get back to his team. They were all learning new jutsu from Kakashi-sensei for their elemental affinities, one of which was entirely new to him, and the prospect was enough to have even the old version of him jumping for joy. That said, he couldn't bring himself to move any faster than a civilian's walk, not with so much going through his mind. Gaara was on his way. Not at that moment, of course. Visiting teams for the Chunin exam tended to arrive up to a week before the beginning of it. But the few weeks he had before his friend actually did show up felt like moments away. It was frustrating because while Naruto knew that he'd be able to help Gaara see the light once the invasion was underway, he really wanted to try and prevent it from happening in the first place. He was trying to save his GG after all. Also, Shikaku was just shy of driving the team mad. Worthless Tanuki. A blink and Naruto sat before the biggest friend he had. Literally the biggest. Seriously, he said in a deadpan to the fox. You've been giving me the cold shoulder since we came back from Kiri, and the first thing you say is to insult your little brother? That one-tailed rat is an embarrassment to the Bijou, Kurama said with a scowl. And you are delusional. I do not give miniature lifeforms such as yourself the cold shoulder. Stop deflecting, I thought we became friends. Naruto complained. In a moment Naruto had been snatched up by a hand that engulfed him up to his neck, brought within feet of one of the fox's intense eyes. That was before you began using those damn chains, he snapped. Naruto slapped his forehead in realization. Or at least he would have if he could move either of his arms. Ugh, he said in understanding. Mom used to chain you up. I totally forgot about that. Running her through with my tail is a memory that will keep me smiling for at least another century. Okay, not cool Kurama. Naruto said angrily. Watch it. What are you going to do about it, brat? Naruto squirmed until one of his arms popped free and he pointed at the Titan fox. I'll kick your ass. I'd like to see you try, worm. Meanwhile. Outside of Naruto's head, Mommy, why is he standing like that? Don't stare, sweetie. The boy was standing in the middle of the road, unmoving, his head leaning back limply with a blank expression on his face. Drool escaped the side of his mouth where the tip of his tongue just passed his lips. If any went close enough, and I can assure you, no one did, they would have heard a low you emanating from his mouth. Anyway, the forest clearing was, surprisingly, unchanged by the brief chaos that took place within it. Kurama grunted in frustration as he let out a hurricane of a sigh. Perspective was important, even to a sentient mass of chakra in the shape of a colossal fox with man hands. Even if that perspective happened to be upside down at the moment. A muffled shout had the giant fox grunt once more, this time as he rolled over into a seated position. A blonde human was pressed into the ground where his back had been. Thanks. Naruto said dully, prying himself out of the earth. We good? Whatever. They'd. Fought wasn't quite the word, but it did well enough to describe the situation. Regardless, it didn't take long for them to reach an understanding. Naruto knew that Kurama was still his friend. Kurama knew that Naruto was a grade A certified moron. A moron who still genuinely believed they were good friends. Let's plan for when Shikaku shows up, Naruto said, stretching with a series of pops from his back. I should have a little training by then so we can start really working together from now on. Right. Just do it while you're walking, before someone declares you brain dead. Not that they'd be wrong. Yeah. So, what do you think? Hiruzen Sarutobi considered the man who sat in front of his desk, watching the crystal ball that contained a blonde genin in orange excitedly meeting back up with his team. The man watched for another few seconds before tapping the ball twice, causing the image to vanish. I don't know what you expect, sensei, the man said with a sigh. He got to his feet with a grunt that belied his age. I haven't seen him in years. I doubt the kid even remembers me. Come now, Jiraiya, Hiruzen said with a raised eyebrow. Even a bad jonin could give me a report on someone after watching them for a minute. Which was a comical statement, considering Jiraiya of the Sannin was hailed as one of the greatest living shinobi in the land of fire, if not the world. I've read the file, the Sannin said noncommittally. The file doesn't do him justice, the Hokage said evenly. He is more than ready. Minato would agree with me, you know this. Maybe, Jiraiya said. And maybe Kushina would gut you instead. Things are changing in the elemental nations, Hiruzen said with a frown. War could find us in the next few years. It may very well be at our doorstep already. We need Naruto ready to take his place on the board if it comes to it. The board, huh? If that's the case, then why didn't you just get that Mukuten kid in here to train him before? Because in spite of all I've done, I am still just an old man who wants the best for his children and grandchildren. Jiraiya barked an empty laugh, leaving the office with no further comment. The Hokage let out a long sigh, dropping into his chair wearily. Hard-headed boy, if you cared so much, then you should have taken the hat 12 years ago when you had the option. Sakura hummed in thought as she watched Kakashi work with Sasuke to teach him his promised Jutsu. 2 each in fire and lightning. No Chidori yet, but really it was only a matter of time at this point. He simply copied each using his Sharingan to speed up the process so they could work on power and improving them overall. Sakura ultimately still needed Tsunade to really go into her own once more, and even then it would take time for her to learn things. Bullshit is bullshit, I guess, she said absently, looking down at the roughly textured gloves that covered her hands and forearms. Kakashi had actually surprised her by showing her 2 earth jutsu she didn't know at all. The first was a simple earth clone. With Naruto as a nearly constant teammate through her previous life, she'd never entertained the idea of using solid clones herself, simply the incorporeal ones for misdirection. His were always both more abundant and of superior quality. Still, the utility of having some actual clone technique couldn't be understated, particularly when those clones could punch above their weight class. Glass cannons in every sense of the word. The second technique was the far more interesting of the two. Earth armor. She could fortify her body by manipulating the earth to cover it. If she covered her whole body, it would turn her into a durable but mainly immobile target, but with greater control she could choose instead to more flexibly apply it where she wanted. Useful, to be sure. She'd have to experiment. A sudden gust of wind kicked up nearby, causing her to look at the final member of her team. Naruto lay flat on his back in the grass, every blade pointing away from him like it didn't like him. Though he'd clearly messed up whichever jutsu he'd been practicing, the expected look of annoyance wasn't there. He just stared at the sky quietly. "Hey, you okay? Naruto?" She poked him on the shoulder to get his attention, so caught up in whatever he was thinking about. "Huh? Hey. Sakura," he said, blinking at the girl now squatting next to him. "Did you need something?" "That's what I'm asking you," she returned. "You look a bit out of it, everything okay?" As he trailed off, Sakura wondered if he was about to actually talk about the fox. As far as she could remember, he never explicitly told anyone about his burden. They'd all just found out from one place or another. "I've got a problem, I guess," he said, voice carefully measured to be as neutral as possible. "And I'm not sure how to deal with it. The fox must have always been weighing on him like this. What have I ever done to help him? It's okay if you don't want to share it, but don't forget that we're here to support you," Sakura said with a smile. "I'm sure no matter what it is we can take it on as a team." The thoughtful expression on the blonde's face was quickly replaced by a cheerful one. "Thanks, Sakura. I guess I really needed that." He took her offered hand and they stood up together. "I'll remember what you said." "You'd better," she chided, narrowing her eyes. "So what are you working on? Having trouble with your new jutsu?" To her surprise, Naruto suddenly looked embarrassed. No actually," he admitted, scratching a cheek with a single finger. "The jutsu Kakashi-sensei showed me actually aren't that hard. They really just blow wind in a direction. I think I'm supposed to use them more to combo with Sasuke than anything. I'll practice the water ones later." So then what? I'm, trying to invent something, he said with a small chuckle. Oh. Tell me all about it. Sakura said, genuine excitement flowing through her. She loved technical things and jutsu were no different. Besides, maybe she could help. What's the purpose of your jutsu? It's wind-based, I assume, but are you trying for something more offensive, defensive? And how much chakra dash across the training ground? Kakashi and Sasuke paused to watch Naruto rapidly gain an overwhelmed look on his face as their resident brainiac got too excited for her own good trying to help. This is a good team, Kakashi said fondly, smiling at the pair. What was your genin team like, sensei? Sasuke asked, turning away from his teammates to continue practicing the speed of his hand signs without distractions or the chance of friendly fire. Kakashi tapped his chin with a thoughtful finger before turning back to Sasuke. Nothing like you guys at all. Sasuke couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. So when are you going to teach me a real jutsu? He posed, finishing his string of signs before pointing to a tree he'd thrown a shuriken into earlier. A crack of electricity and flash of light left the area around the thrown weapon blackened. So impatient, Kakashi said absently, nodding in apparent satisfaction at the performed jutsu. If you make it to the tournament portion of the exam, I'll consider it. A wide smile lit the Uchiha's face. It was 1 week later when it happened. Much in the same way that Naruto often found himself walking past Ichiraku Ramen or atop the head of the Hokage monument, there was one other place he couldn't help but visit each day. The sounds of soft laughter and splashing water rose lazily with the steam. His ears, so accustomed to the sound, easily picked up the taps of wood on stone and the low but persistent grumbling of the old lady that owned the establishment as she oversaw her domain. But today there was something different, though no less foreign to his memory. Hushed giggles and the occasional scratch of something rough on paper. The slight sounds of shifting feet and rustling clothing. Suddenly there Jiraiya was, just as when Naruto had bumped into him all those years ago. Squatting by a peephole in the wooden fence surrounding one of the most popular hot springs in Leaf. Giggling perversely as he occasionally scratched something into a tiny notebook. Naruto thought he'd prepared himself to see anyone who hadn't made it. That he could take anything in stride and roll with it. After everything he'd accomplished, his experiences since the reset, it seemed obvious that he'd adjusted. A mane of spiky white hair proved him so horribly wrong. During their training trip, Jiraiya had told him about the times he'd checked in on him as a young kid. The time he'd delivered a case of instant ramen to his front door. The year he'd gifted the Toad wallet for his birthday. In fact, if he wasn't peeping at a hot spring for inspiration or doing something for the village, he was usually writing while sitting on Naruto's roof. Once he began the academy though, Jiraiya found himself out of the village nearly year-round. The Chunin exam was the first time he'd seen Naruto in several years. Of course, Naruto didn't remember any of this. He hadn't even been aware of any of it. It made him angry at first to learn it all. Angry enough to shout things he didn't mean. Jiraiya's death brought whatever resentment he'd still carried to a swift end, replaced by an emptiness he couldn't begin to fill. Now in this moment by the hot spring, all Naruto could do was grab the one thing he didn't want to lose ever again. Naruto simply walked over to the man and put his arms around as much of him as he could reach before he broke down crying. He felt the same. He smelled the same. It only made him cry harder. Don't leave me like that. Stupid toad head. Jiraiya, understandably, froze for a few moments before his face fell, notebook disappearing in a small puff of smoke. A large hand found its way to the top of Naruto's head where it gently rested. The boy's desperate grip redoubled. Sorry, kiddo. Several minutes later. I'm sorry. I lost control for a bit, it won't happen again. It's all right. Jiraiya's reply was delivered with an easy shrug, hoping that Naruto really wouldn't break down again. That first time had been enough of an emotional blow for him in the first place. He'd honestly never considered the boy would remember him. Or knew that he even came around. Or was that attached to him? I know it probably doesn't make much sense, but... Naruto gave him a stricken look. He looked so lost. It's been such a long time and no one. I didn't have anyone else. Nope, another Rasengan to the heart. Mercy, this was going to be a long day. I'm surprised you recognized me, Jiraiya said honestly. It's more a feeling than anything, but I'd be blind not to, Naruto said with a frown. You were on my roof a lot, so I noticed when you didn't come back. That's life as a shinobi, kid, Jiraiya said with a sigh. Village first, everything else second. That's kinda. I don't know. Sad though, isn't it? Yes. Genuinely, Jiraiya agreed. This was what happened when he put the village first. It wasn't so difficult to understand why Tsunade had left, really. Whether he agreed with her or the way she went about it was a different story. It is. Better now? Much. Thanks. And dear Kami, let that be the case. Good. Sensei told me you've been doing well. Gigi got me into the academy after you left and I graduated this year, Naruto said proudly, smiling a toothy grin. I'm on Team 7 with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. Kakashi-sensei is my, sensei, duh. Oh? Do you like him? Jiraiya asked in amusement. Now that the waterworks had ended, Naruto was far more cheerful than he'd expected. Kakashi-sensei's pretty great, even though he's late and reads your porn all the time. Hey, ain't nothing wrong with my literature. It's pretty good, but you could do better, Naruto reasoned, scratching his chin in thought. To this Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. You're reading my stuff? Ha. The sage let out a barking laugh and slapped Naruto on the back hard enough to plant him face first in the dirt. You've got good taste, kid. Learned. From the hack, cough best. Naruto managed from the ground, spitting out a tuft of dirt and grass. So tell me about your teammates then. What are they like? Jiraiya asked in curiosity. They're awesome. Naruto said brightly as he dusted himself off, much to the Sanin's surprise. Sasuke is really cool and collected, but he's always got my back when I need it. Sakura is really smart and nice, and she listens when I need someone to talk to. Oh, and they're both super strong. Our team kicks ass. And here the man had figured all Team 7s were cursed to be like his. Of course he completely believed the boy when he said the team was strong. Apparently each genin was infamous for one reason or another among the jonin and had only become more so after a few months together. Well, Team 7 had always been specially put together to grow terrifying shinobi, in one way or another. Apparently this iteration was no different. Jiraiya stood and thumped a fist to his chest. In that case, why don't you show me what all the Team 7 hype is about? Heck, impress me and might even teach you something. Naruto just grinned. Don't blink or you might regret it, Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya couldn't help but grin too. Several hours later found the odd pair of short blonde and white-haired giant at a ramen stand, the latter laughing uproariously at a story the former was telling. Man, I would have paid to see that, Jiraiya said appreciatively, downing another cup of sake. Sensei must have lost his mind. So what happened when you got caught? Hey, don't say it like that, I turned myself in, Naruto said defensively. I mean, it's not like I could get away with it, I literally painted across an entire cliffside. I remember that, Ayam said with a smile, hiding it behind her hand so her father wouldn't see. The village went crazy that morning when the sun came up and shinobi chased you all over the place. Turned yourself in, huh? Jiraiya repeated with raised eyebrows. I mean, I didn't make it easy for anyone. If I recall correctly, you cleaned the entire thing over the next week, Teuchi added, shaking his head. You know why those faces are there, Naruto. Heck, you even said you were going to be Hokage one day. That's no way to honor their sacrifices. The genin sighed, dropping his chopsticks into the empty bowl in front of him. His third at this point. Before, it always felt like they were looking down on me. Being Hokage isn't really my number one goal anymore, but don't get me wrong, I still do respect them. I think you could do it, Jiraiya said, scratching his chin in thought. Because if their scrap was anything to go by, his old student son was a gold mine of untapped potential. Strong, fast, crafty, unpredictable, and the true game changer that were chakra chains. All he needed was some ceiling utility and a haymaker or two, and he'd be unstoppable by anyone less than a decent jonin. As a wet behind the ears genin no less. Then there was the matter of the kyubi. The old man wanted their Jinchuriki whipped into shape for the Chunin exam. After he was through with the kid, if he wasn't promoted straight to jonin, he'd stop writing porn. You do? Naruto said, genuinely surprised. Maybe after they'd known each other for years, but now? What? Hard to believe. Jiraiya countered. I mean, people are people, the blonde reasoned. You're you. Kid, if I'm training you, you could be anything you want to be, the Sannin said with a shrug. He paid for their meal and stepped back into the street. But before you become Hokage for your village, you'll need to become something else. Naruto's face was shadowed as he stepped into the sunlight, but when he looked up into Jiraiya's eyes there was nothing but serious determination on his face. Right. Let's do it. Kai. I don't understand the purpose of this exercise. Haven't I already explained this? Kai. You lack finesse with your genjutsu. That doesn't explain why you look like that. Kurenai turned to give him a rather immature pout, fists on her hips and all. It fit her quite well, considering she was presently hinged as herself at 13. If you spent half as much time doing the exercise, Kai, as being distracted and complaining about it, you'd have mastered it. Kai, ready, she shot, though not before regarding him with a smug grin. Is this the problem? The great Uchiha has trouble making his genjutsu softer because of how edgy he is. Sasuke ignored the statement, unwilling to let any hint show that she was actually right. It wasn't enough that he could place one over most people without them knowing. It wasn't enough that he could actually make people question reality itself by using his clan's eyes. What mattered was that Kurenai was miles better than he was, and she didn't have a ridiculously overpowered pair of eyes to help. The way that she was able to layer an illusion over anything without so much as a gentle smile had him wondering if there wasn't some long-buried Uchiha genetics in her ancestry. Her eyes were certainly red enough for it. And so what if he wasn't amazing at her kind of genjutsu? When so much of your life was dedicated to learning how to obliterate your opponent through force, subtlety took a bit more to get accustomed to. Unable to think of something snappish to retort, he said, "You don't have to keep saying it, I'm not blind, I know when it isn't working." Apparently satisfied, Kurenai turned on her heel and continued leading them down the market street. Begrudgingly, Sasuke followed, resigned to watch her form sway minutely from side to side. Perhaps the chief reason he wasn't having much luck with his training was that he was mainly trying to think of ways to make his kid half die a painful death so he wouldn't ever again need to be tormented by the fact that he thought something was, dare he say it, cute. And 13-year-old Kurenai was, if nothing else, undoubtedly cute. The near physical pain that came with thinking such a thought was deeply disturbing to the genin. He was Sasuke Uchiha. He'd become one of the most respected and feared shinobi in the world, for a lot of bad reasons, but we're not focusing on that right now. He fixed his eyes on the back of Kurenai's head and let his chakra reach out to envelop her. Softly, like the lightest, sheerest sheet of fabric falling over a figure, taking every aspect of her shape and not changing in any way. It flowed with her and settled, gliding over her chakra and finally invading Kai. You suck. His eyelid twitched twice. Sakura stood at relative peace, but anyone who knew her well enough would be able to see her practically vibrating in excitement. She was standing just outside the General Shinobi Hospital, waiting for Kakashi-sensei to go in with her. They had an appointment with the director where they would hopefully convince him to accept a genin as a Mednin apprentice. There was a medical program, established years ago by Tsunade Senju, for eligible chunin to enlist in and become medical nin, but it was restrictively difficult to get into if only for the demanded skills needed. Not to mention, she would need to be a chunin to even apply. Of course, it wouldn't be particularly difficult to convince anyone that she was suitable for medical jutsu, but going about it this way was by far the most effective strategy for landing Tsunade as her sensei once again. It was inevitable that she would return to the village, and by then there wouldn't be a soul in Konoha's medical division who didn't know about the latest and greatest genin out of the academy. I'm strong. The statement was spoken aloud and it made her smile in pride. Her body was at a peak she could only have dreamed of when she first became a genin. No longer was she needing to supplement her growth with medical techniques, simply eating well and staying active. She could continue, obviously, but it would both be unnatural and draw attention in ways she didn't want. She wanted to be a better Sakura, not a new Sakura. Her experiences, both good and bad, were valuable to her. There you are, Sakura. Kakashi's statement, given in such a way as if he'd been the one waiting for her, caused her to let out the smallest of sighs. Hi, Kakashi-sensei, she greeted, giving him a small wave as he joined her. Ready? I should be asking you that, the Jonin returned. You understand why they don't typically do this, right? Of course, but they'd be crazy not to make an exception, she said with an open palm. Kakashi shrugged, not about to argue the point. He agreed completely, and was the primary reason he reached out in the first place. The hospital was remarkably peaceful as they walked through it, led to the director's office by a chunin. There was little happening beyond day-to-day activity, mainly moderate damage taken during training exercises, or the injuries from squads returning from the field. Konoha's shinobi force was on the larger side of its peers, but their focus on teamwork and support helped bring a lot more people home in one piece than people believed. As a past future member of the medical division, Sakura knew she appreciated the philosophy every day. Kakashi, hello there, the director said, smiling as they entered the man's office. Yo. Kakashi, would it kill you to not be yourself for a second? Hello, Tenma-san, thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Sakura said politely, bowing her head in respect. Kenzo Tenma returned the gesture, smiling down at the genin kindly. There was a look in his eyes that belied his curiosity. A part of her couldn't help but warm at seeing him there, loosely wearing his medical coat, and obviously not a name on a memorial pillar. He had been killed in action during the Fourth War. I was wondering about this, but considering that this guy is on time for a change, you must be the real deal. I'm confident that I can impress you, Sakura said. Without preamble. I certainly hope so, Tenma replied, gesturing to a table at the side of the office that was covered in a number of objects that she instantly recognized as tools to help test chakra control in a variety of ways. No doubt he'd be testing her medical knowledge after. This place could use some new blood, and not the red kind. Sakura grinned appreciatively at the pun, having heard it a dozen times in the past. She glanced at a nearby calendar on the wall. The Chunin exam was just under 2 weeks away. So, what would you like me to do first? A number of feet away, Kakashi leaned against the wall, nose buried in his little orange book, smiling in a way that had nothing to do with what he read. With 1 week remaining until the Chunin exam, the Team 7 genin found themselves gathered around a kitchen counter staring at an unopened folder. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Sensei passed me this, it has the info on the teams we've been assigned. They'd already discussed how they wanted to handle this. As a team they'd always support each other, but it was inevitable that they would need to split their attention to keep tabs on all their targets at the same time. 3 teams, 3 of them. Now they just needed to decide who would take which. That's great, but should we really be reading this here? Sasuke and Sakura looked at Naruto as he voiced his concern. I mean, you're out of your mind, Kakashi. Subaru-chan is obviously the best. Hirono-san, I respect what you've done for the village, but you are wrong. Hikari-chan is the clear choice. Out of sight, the 2 voices projected out of the nearby sitting room. How can you call yourself a true fan of literature when you're so blind? It's Subaru-chan. I pity you for your ignorance. Hikari-chan. Subaru-chan. Hikari-chan. The 3 turned as one to watch Sakura's mother walk past them to the nearby staircase, pinching the bridge of her nose. 2 incomes are better than 1. 2 incomes are better than 1, Mabuki. Nowhere to dump the body anyway. 2 incomes. The 3 stood in silence for a beat. Never mind. My place doesn't have food anyway, he mumbled. Open it, I need to escape reality, Sakura deadpanned. Sasuke broke the seal with an application of chakra and flipped it open, leafing through the papers with a shifting expression. The other 2 waited in curiosity but were patient. Okay, let's go through these one at a time, Sasuke said, placing the stack in the center of the group. On the top was the symbol of Kirigakure. Kiri is sending 1 team, and these are the names of the members. Eyebrows went up around the group, though for different reasons. Zabuza Momochi? Isn't he a missing nin? Asked Naruto carefully. I'm sure a lot of Kiri's missing nin have returned now that there's a new Mizukage, Sasuke explained. Their village is the one that chooses if they're missing or not. Otherwise he'd never have been able to return to his home, as strange as it had felt to call it that. Haku? The boys turned to see Sakura's eyes further down the page in surprise. Whatever they were thinking was carefully kept off of their faces. They weren't supposed to know who that was after all. Do you recognize someone? This girl I met when I was on the mission with Ino's team. Definitely Shinobi trained, but she was at the bridge builder's house guarding his family before we got there and she's a boy. They winced at the sudden spike in volume, but it went unnoticed to the commotion that was still happening a room away. But Sakura looked at a wall without seeing it. He's so pretty though. Naruto mentally sighed. I know exactly what you're going through, Sakura. Anyone else you recognize? Sasuke asked. While the interaction with Haku, while surprising, wasn't so far-fetched, he knew more would be even less likely. No, but I'd like to take point on this team, if you both don't mind. She'd already given this much thought, but despite knowing that she was considerably stronger than the other 2, they were both incredible in their own right, far and above their strength during her previous life. If they could handle things then, it made her even more comfortable not pushing to take the most dangerous team of them all. Besides, she couldn't always keep them safe from the world. They'd need to keep getting stronger just like her. Sure, that's fine, Naruto agreed, flipping to the next team's information. Suna. I'll be the best one to handle this team. Are you sure? Sasuke asked, scanning over the file with. This isn't a team to take lightly. The thickness of the mission file was mainly due to this team. Konoha had far more information on one of its allies than the others. Quite a bit more than just a mission history. Including Ichibi Jinchuriki? Sakura said slowly, forming the words slowly as she read them. It means he has the one-tailed demon sealed in him, Sasuke said without inflection. He didn't even glance Naruto's way. My father said every major village has them. They are war deterrents. She looked at him in shock. That's. Could he be a danger to the village? We're allies with Suna. If it weren't possible he wouldn't be in this file, Sasuke said pointedly. The other two seem fine, but it says here Gaara is emotionally unstable. It's not his fault. Naruto said suddenly. He paused as they broke off suddenly, staring at the closed fist he'd hit the countertop with. Sorry. Gigi talked to me about him a while ago right after he gave us the mission. Gaara's seal probably sucks and the villagers are afraid of him. I can use my chains to help stop him if he loses control, at least until someone stronger can. Okay, Sakura said with a small smile. We'll leave it to you then. Then that will leave me with the Odo team, Sasuke said with a small grin. More than fine by me. Their file was a single sheet of paper with barely anything on it but their names. Still, thinking about them brought their collective thoughts to the same places. Orochimaru. The first real threat they would be facing. The beginning of a series of events that had spiraled so wildly out of control for them all. Listen. Sasuke's voice was the same volume as it had been all evening, but there was an intensity there that perked the other two up. It doesn't matter what this test has in it or beyond. As long as we take it as a team, there's nothing that can bring us down. Heck yeah, we rock, said Naruto, bumping Sasuke's fist. Sakura met them a second later with her own. Team 7. A larger hand in an armored glove covered the top of the three fists. Kakashi grinned down at them with his solitary smiling eye. Team 7. This is it, right? Yeah, no doubt. The three stood outside a mid-sized building no different from the others around it. It seemed like the timeline was having fun at their expense again, twisting what was for no rhyme or reason. Think of it like a pretest. If you can't find the location of your target, then you certainly can't be considered a chunin by your village. Those had been the words from their overly cheerful sensei. It wasn't that he didn't think they'd find it, on the contrary, he'd probably just as readily believe Guy was tired of training, but he definitely knew it would irritate them. Hence the extra enthusiastic smile he delivered the news with. The three genin wandered through the village, not particularly pressed for time, until they overheard a couple of chunin gossiping very obviously as they talked about the exam. Not 10 minutes later they'd pinpointed the building. Get out of our way, we have an exam to take. Yeah, move it. Upon entering the building they were greeted with a familiar sight. A handful of genin were grouped in front of two chunin who blocked the way into what appeared to be the exam room. Why should I? You'll just fail anyway, one chunin said with a shrug. The other picked his teeth with a senbon, the image of boredom. Do you think they're all getting paid for this? Naruto found himself asking as they walked down the hall to the stairs. The chunin? Not sure. Sakura mused. Maybe? It couldn't be more than a D rank though. They probably enjoy messing with the genin, Sasuke mused. The proctors too. It happened to them when they were genin, I'll bet. Some more than others, Naruto said with a grimace. Maybe the universe would spare them this time. Probably not. Eventually the three reached the correct door. It felt a bit weird, considering they hadn't run into any issues so far, but there was no reason to go out of their way to start something. Ready? Sakura looked at her teammates and gave them a confident smile. They nodded and she pointed to the door. Then let's do it. The sole kunoichi of Team 7 leveled an irritated look at her test paper, the pencil in her hand. Scratching away an answer to a question as if it had a mind of its own. The build of excitement she'd felt before entering the room had died like a rain cloud above Suna within minutes of entering the room. The other genin had thrown them looks ranging from uncaring to outright hostility while the other rookies just watched them apprehensively. It's not like she expected anyone to be welcoming, but at least a smile from her friends would have been nice. Even that snake Kabuto and his stupid info cards weren't enough to break the awkwardness of the group, though it was amusing to see him get more and more frustrated at how little any of them were paying attention to him. While they all got on very well as ex-classmates, and more so as allies. This was the first time they were actively placed in a situation where they were competing for something so serious. She doubted even taking the time to explain the finer nuances of Chunin exam politics would get through to them, though at least Shikamaru would understand before lifelessly declaring the affair troublesome. Naruto, however, bless his lovable blonde head, was an unblockable ray of sunshine, going around to chat with anyone and everyone to kill time. Sasuke just hung back, relaxed but contemplative. While seeing him lost in thought was nothing new, the relaxed expression that came with it still was. She wondered what was on his mind this time. She was able to greet Haku and his team before the test started at least, so that was a plus. Considering who else was on his team, she was confident they'd be able to speak more after the second part of the exam. A few minutes later, Sakura sighed in boredom as she finished writing her final answer of their paper exam. Her memory wasn't so perfect that she remembered the exact questions she'd answered the first time, but these felt just as challenging, which was to say they were absurdly easy for someone like her. Subtly she let her eyes wander to the genin she knew, curious how they were all handling the test. Over a dozen teams had failed already, but she'd noticed none of it before, so focused on her own paper and team last time. Shino caught her eye first. He was sitting a few seats away at her 2 o'clock, writing without hesitation on his paper. She focused a bit closer and saw several insects both coming and going from his body. Communicating to him about the test, no doubt, but far more were leaving than returning. She followed one as it meandered around in front of her before landing on a leaf genin and moving out of sight. Keeping tabs on the others. Smart. Ino was close as well, writing away steadily. She found Choji and Shikamaru as well, though in a different direction. If she had to guess, Shikamaru was controlling them both as he did the test for them, though that required actual effort from the Nara, so maybe not? Ino had probably gotten the answers from a mind switch. Kiba, 5 seats to her left, had Akamaru relaying information. Quietly from atop his head, though how the dog could read was still a mystery to her. Niji sat in his seat at the front of the room without a single movement, clearly having finished already. Really, a test like this was too easy for someone with the Byakugan. Hinata must have had an equally easy time, but the same certainly couldn't be said for Lee. It looked like he was okay though, as Tenten was doing something with ninja wire and mirrors to give him a view of her test. How did she set those things up in the first place? Wonder how Naruto's doing. He'd been a clear wreck the first time around. Now though. What the heck is he doing over there? Naruto chuckled as he finally finished, dropping the pencil with a satisfied clatter. Hinata, seated directly to his right, had caught his eye earlier with a look of concern, but he waggled his eyebrows at her in a reassuring way that made her need to hold back a giggle. Now he reached his hand under the table and, with the aid of her Byakugan, she watched him rapidly trace a design on the underside of the table with a chakra-tipped finger. It looked like a seal? Has he always been able to do that? He caught her eye a second later, winked, and lightly slapped his palm over the seal. Suddenly his test paper was replaced with another one that was completely filled out with the answers. What the foo dash? Number 38, sit down and shut up or fail immediately. Ibiki snapped in irritation at the genin that had jumped out of his seat. The expressions of a number of nearby Chunin proctors twitched in suppressed amusement as the genin sat back down with a scowl, grabbing his pencil as he tried to do something about the page-sized dick butt sitting on the table in front of him. Naruto casually drew a line through the name on his new test paper and wrote his own. Naruto-san sure has confidence, Hinata thought in admiration. Meanwhile in the far corner of the room, Sasuke sat in contemplation, eyes locked on the back of a head of red hair. Karen. He'd completely forgotten she'd been at this Chunin exam until he saw her standing there in the room, doing her utmost to present as small and unthreatening a profile as she could. He could practically feel the irritation the girl's teammate was leveling at her from a number of seats over. Compared to the woman he remembered, she was nearly unrecognizable. I can't let her get taken by Orochimaru. He let out a small breath and closed his eyes. For her sake. And mine. That's right. If you fail the final question, then you'll never become Chunin. Ever. You can't do that. My exam, my rules, brats, Ibiki spat. Failing this is the end of your upward movement. Better to give up now and hope someone nicer runs your exam next time. Don't make me laugh. Despite his words, Sasuke chuckled aloud, drawing surprised looks from all over the room. Naruto and Sakura watched him, wide-eyed. How many times will we take missions where if we fail we won't make it out alive? If I can't put it all on the line for a baby test like this, then how could I ever call myself a shinobi? The shift in the room was subtle, but all around genin were suddenly sitting straighter, expressions hardened and confident. Ibiki let his eyes pass over the room briefly before returning to Sasuke. Big words for someone whose toughest missions so far have been painting fences and shoveling shit. Sasuke was unruffled, staring down the grizzled jonin unblinkingly. The unsure genin watched their fellow and slowly joined him until not a soul in the room looked away from their proctor. Ibiki cast his gaze around the room for a few seconds before sighing. Screw it. You all pass. What? He might be a little shit, but he's got the right of it, Ibiki said with a shrug. A tug at his bandana had many of the genin gasping at the horror it hid. Being a shinobi isn't a game. It's a check you sign that your death will cash one day. Your resolve will be constantly tested, and if you aren't ready to risk it all, then you will eventually fail. But what about the test we just did? One genin asked in confusion, pointing to the stack of collected papers. The fact that you're asking just tells me you're probably going to die in the next part, Ibiki said flatly, making the genin gulp. As a chunin, you will naturally encounter scenarios where you don't have everything you need to progress. Getting caught is equivalent to death, so your ability to gather intelligence covertly is a critical skill. Those who cannot do so have no right to become chunin. At the very least, everyone still in this room has managed this to some extent. But honestly, he made a couple hand signs before torching the stack of papers, reducing it to ashes in a second. You think I'm gonna grade that like some dumbass academy teacher? Try not to die, retards. The uproar that followed only made him smirk as he left, passing a note to one of the chunin by the door. The genin, still up in arms, were at a loss for what to do next but didn't get the opportunity to ask as someone crashed through a window near the head of the room. An enormous banner suddenly covered up the damage, pinned to the floor and ceiling with kunai. The second stage begins now. This is no time to be celebrating. I am the examiner for the second. The Tokubetsu jonin trailed off as her words were swallowed by the chaotic sound of pissed genin. It seemed only a handful of them had even noticed her entrance. Ibiki, what did you do to them? Ibiki? One of the chunin proctors walked over to the confused jonin. Sorry, ma'am, he just left. This is for you. He handed over the note which she squinted at. Blame, shut the fuck up. The room instantly quieted and all eyes locked on her. Better. Blame the Uchiha, he ruined the last question, she read slowly, eyes scanning the room before finding him. Hey, shithead, you realize you've doomed a bunch of people, right? Kami, there's what, 40-something teams in here? Even half is too much. Gonna have to modify the next part of the test. What a pain. The Uchiha didn't react in the slightest. He totally knows what he did. Ugh, easy fix I guess, but I'll need to kill some time with them while we make adjustments. Fine, follow me kids. We're going for a walk. If you can't keep up then you fail. Haku suppressed a breath of relief as they finally appeared to have reached their destination. The angry leaf jonin had led them on what felt like a marathon around the village with barely a second to see where they were at any given time. They'd even doubled back a couple times, throwing many in the group into confusion as they passed one another. Now though he was confident they'd made it. The giant, ominous forest behind a 50-foot-high metal fence that stretched endlessly to either side of it, periodically covered by pieces of paper that read "Danger, stay out," kind of helped. "This place looks evil." Chojuro shivered slightly as he looked at the gnarly trees, easily the size of their buildings back home. The darkness between them was oppressive, even from where they were standing. Not for the first time he wished he hadn't been forced to leave his main weapons behind, a regular sword at his back instead. "Why are we here?" he moaned. "Mizukage-sama is so cruel." Haku stretched his back minutely as a few more genin filled the clearing, finally catching up with the group. It looked like that was everyone. "At least we will be Chunin after all this." "Right. Chunin," came the sarcastic mumble from their third teammate, Fumiko. "Hi, Haku-san." The three Kiri genin turned to find a pink-haired genin in a red dress smiling at them from a few feet away like she'd been standing with them the whole time. "Sakura-san," Haku greeted politely. After his time in Nami he never expected to be seeing the mysterious Kunoichi again, let alone so soon. Yet there she's been at a food stand in the village as his team explored prior to the beginning of the exam. It was even more of a shock to discover she was a genin competitor. I wanted to say please be careful. We don't call this part of the village the Forest of Death for no reason. The three Kiri genin suppressed a wince at the name. "Thank you for your concern," Haku said with a smile. "The same to you. Once this test ends we should catch up. There'll be plenty of time before the third test. Oh, I'll introduce you to my team, we can get barbecue." Sakura said with a happy bounce. "That sounds wonderful," he said immediately, smiling at his teammates in a way that stopped them from responding. "It looks like we are about to begin, you may want to rejoin your team." Sakura gave a friendly wave and walked back to her team, slinging an arm around both boys' shoulders in camaraderie. "Oi, why'd you dash? Do not engage that team," Haku said in a low voice, cutting across his irritated female teammate with a short glare. "Under any circumstances. If we see them then retreat." "Oh okay?" Chojuro said with uncertainty. "Later. It's starting." Naruto grinned cheerily beneath the arm of his pink-haired teammate. It was times like this that he just had to take a mental step back and appreciate what he had. Sure, he wasn't crushing over the pinkette like he used to, but still. "Alright kids, let's get this thing going," Anko snapped out, bringing the large group of genin to attention. "In case you've had your head up your ass for your whole life, you know that the Chunin exam ends in a tournament. You should also know that it's never particularly long." Most of the genin couldn't help but look around at the group, well over 100 strong. Many began to look visibly uneasy and Anko grinned with malice. "That's right, most of you won't make it through this one." Without turning, she gestured to the fenced area that was dominating their vision. "Behind me is Konoha's largest training ground, number 44, the Forest of Death. It's not safe." She smiled sweetly. "Anyway, this is the location of the second test. If you leave it you will be automatically disqualified." She held up her hand in which were 3 different colored scrolls. Heaven, Earth, and Hell scrolls. Each team will start with one, and enter the forest at a different point. To pass to the next round you must collect one of each and reach the tower at the center of the forest, with your full team. How many dash? A kunai cut across the cheek of the unfortunate genin who went wide-eyed and squeaked. "Shut your damn mouth, kid, I was getting to it," Anko said in annoyance. "There are 42 teams. You do the math." Now, a few extra important things to know. First, you will have 5 days to reach the tower from the moment you enter the forest. Only after that will teams sweep the forest to collect any leftovers and corpses. Second, if anyone opens a scroll during the test their team will be instantly disqualified. Finally, you each need to sign a piece of paper agreeing that we aren't responsible for anything that happens to you in there. You are allowed to kill one another," she added. She let that sink in for a moment before finishing. "Any questions?" The accompanying look of promised homicide got a swift negative from all around. "Line up then. We've wasted enough time as it is." Team 7 moved quickly into the forest and the horn sounded, sticking to the ground despite the tree-running leaf shinobi were so well known for. There was a far greater chance of running into another team this way, and they were hoping for that sooner than not. They had several objectives. First, they needed to obtain an Earth and Hell scroll, theirs being Heaven. Failing the exam would fail their mission. Of course, none of them were particularly worried about securing the scrolls. It had been more than troublesome to get theirs the first time around, but each member of Team 7 was confident that the other two could get a scroll on their own from most teams without too much issue, let alone what they could accomplish themselves. Splitting up was the most sensible plan, and they all agreed with this. It also nicely aligned with their mission. They needed to be keeping track of each target team as much as possible. The Forest of Death was the ideal place to properly scout the teams and, if necessary, deal with them. There was just one issue that made none of them want to split up. A Sannin-sized one. Orochimaru was one of the strongest, most intelligent shinobi of his era, and ranked among a short list of truly dangerous people in the world. Even though they knew how he was disguised, they still found themselves second-guessing that he was even there. The grass woman paid them no mind, dismissing them as much as any of the younger genin, and chatting with her team. She hadn't returned Enko's kunai either. It was enough to make them wonder if something else had inexplicably shifted. In the end there was really only one option that made sense. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sakura's dry voice cut across the ambient sound of Death Forest, around them as nearly 50 orange blondes disappeared into the distance all around them. Shadow clones are bullshit. Hate the player, not the game, quipped Naruto in amusement, throwing her a toothy grin. Sasuke nodded solemnly. He's right, the Uchiha agreed. While I agree with you, this is more of a Naruto is bullshit scenario. Hey! The Pinkette laughed at her teammates' expense and continued to lead them further into the forest. Oh dash! What is it? Sakura and Sasuke came to a halt as Naruto did the same, suddenly looking in a different direction. One of my perimeter clones was taken out, he said, face serious. His head snapped to the left. Another just went. Whatever it is, it took them out faster than I could react. He made his signature hand sign and 3 more clones instantly joined them. Watch dash, he got no further as an immense gust of wind barreled through the forest, tearing up dirt and shrubbery as it carved a path through the trees. The 3 genin barely kept their footing long enough to keep themselves stuck to the ground, but that didn't stop them from being pelted with debris. The new clones did their best to protect the others from getting hit by anything too nasty. You're all still on your feet. Impressive. The pale woman with the grass headband walked forward, smiling at the genin in an easygoing manner. She removed her wide-brimmed hat and let it fall to the ground, all the while letting her eyes move between the 3 of them, lingering on one more than the others. I believe you have something my team dash. She didn't get to complete the sentence as a sealed scroll landed at her feet with a thud, having been thrown there by Sasuke. Take it. He crossed his arms, moving his weight to one side as he settled into place. Seriously, it's yours. You're too strong for us. We'll just find another one. The woman watched him for a moment, eyes moving between the other 2 unblinking genin before returning to the apparent leader. I'll be honest, I'm disappointed dash, again she was cut off, though this time it was due to trying to talk through a kunai lodged in her throat. 2, in fact. Another 4 were buried hilt-deep in other parts of her body. All 6 were held firmly in the hands of Team 7, whose still-standing images wavered and vanished like a hazy mirage. As one, the three regrouped to their original position, though clearly ready to move again. Something's not right, Naruto said cautiously. She's not bleeding properly, Sakura immediately said. The grass nin's body slumped momentarily before going rigid, the bloody kunai falling to the ground with dull thuds. Her head lolled back on her shoulders and mouth opened only for two hands to emerge and impossibly push the opening wider. An unharmed man with extremely pale skin climbed out, leaving behind the now flappy, empty second skin and clothing. Like a grotesque shed skin. My. He wasn't kidding about your record, he said, stretching his neck slightly as he regarded the three of them. Catching me in a genjutsu and forcing me to do that. You've exceeded my expectations already. You're no genin, why are you here? Sasuke asked, eyes briefly scanning the area before returning to the man. Call it a vested interest, he said with a smile. And really, the academy must be slipping for anyone not to know me on sight. I am Orochimaru of the Sannin. A Konoha shinobi, just like you. Recognition lit their faces as they automatically tightened their formation, causing the man to smile. Good, you do know of me. You're a traitor, Naruto ground out, not needing to hide his hate. Orochimaru spared a dismissing look at the blonde before returning to his target. I've been watching you, Sasuke. Limitless potential, kept contained by a village that neither recognizes it, nor is interested in seeing the Uchiha rise again. Your point? I'm the only one that can help you reach that potential, he said. Simply put, you'll never fully grow in the shadow of the leaf. I'm here to help change that. Maybe you're right, Sasuke said after a moment, making Naruto and Sakura look at him in alarm. But that's okay. He sent a small grin to his teammates. I've got what I need right here. Yeah. Listen, asshat, Naruto snapped, stepping up. No one's buying what you're selling. So make like a tree and leave. Naruto, what did I tell you about tree puns? Sakura couldn't help but mutter under her breath. Sorry, I've been trying to branch out but nothing's really taken root. The echoing sound of a hand meeting a forehead combined with a groan moved through the clearing while the Sannin looked at Naruto with a blank expression. I think I'll kill you now. Hand signs. Blurred, and 1 second later and a giant snake was suddenly barreling right at them from nowhere. Oh sure dash. Naruto automatically shoved his teammates out of the way before he was gone in a heartbeat, crashing through the mammoth trees from being run over by an equally train-sized snake. Within seconds they'd vanished into the distance, only the sounds of destruction and a shouting blonde in their wake. Naruto. Don't lose focus now. Orochimaru was instantly in Sasuke's guard, snapping his head to the side with a punch and kicking him back into a tumbling heap. The Sannin pivoted to Sakura, who ducked a kunai to the head only to be knocked to the ground by a kick. She rolled to avoid a falling heel that would have opened her skull and sprung back, rejoining her teammate who'd recovered from the sucker punch. Well, at least the annoying one is gone, he said with a smile, pausing for a moment to give them time to recover. You really think Konoha has prepared you, do you? In that case, come at me with everything you have. You and your teammate might die if you don't. Sasuke gave the man a scowl before his eyes shifted colors, stepping in front of a concerned Sakura. Yes, Orochimaru hissed in satisfaction. Show me what the last loyal Uchiha can really do. Meanwhile, XXX, would you slow down, you stupid, ow. Shit. Stop slamming into trees. Naruto awkwardly elbowed the nose of the massive snake to little effect. If anything proved he was dealing with a summoned creature, it would be this. The durability of the thing was beyond abnormal. The reason it was awkward, of course, was because he was currently about 80% in the thing's mouth. How it even managed to maneuver him there was a mystery in its own right. How far are you going to take me anyway? He grunted, gripping tighter as the snake's tongue attempted to pull him in fully. I can't even feel. Suddenly an evil grin lit the blonde's face. Blue eyes were replaced by red ones with slitted pupils. "You're dead, shitty snake." Orochimaru was having, well, not exactly a good day but not exactly a bad one either. Kabuto, the little shit, failed to report properly on the Uchiha and his team. They were clearly more than what they may have appeared on the outside, a solid but still fresh team of rookies. Just 30 seconds of fighting Sasuke and the girl told him they could easily make it to the final rounds of the exam. They were both still alive against him after all. He stepped back twice to avoid a punch thrown from an earth clone, shattering it with a near-invisible strike to the torso. He backhanded another that approached from behind, spinning to land an elbow into the gut of the one who had made them. Sakura had no fear when facing him, using every opportunity to stay within arm's reach. It had only taken blocking a single of her punches to understand why. Orochimaru suppressed a wince as his elbow was broken, not expecting the damage from the hand that Sakura has been able to block his strike with. Irritation surged through him as her face was replaced with that of a busty former teammate who also had a talent for breaking anything she touched. Internally he once more reset his expectation of the Pinkette, making a mental note to express his displeasure to Kabuto the next time he saw him. The lack of information about the apparent nobody on Team 7 was causing him no end of aggravation. A fool, a prodigy, and a girl with insane strength. It seems Sensei has been nostalgic lately to let this team come to be. I need to take this girl out of the equation so I can properly focus on the reason I'm here. Whatever follow-up he'd been planning on making to the girl however was quickly aborted as several lightning-coated kunai rained down on his location, cutting him off from the recovering genin. "Alright, Sakura. I got him," she said in a breathless voice. Counterattack or no, the strike to her gut had winded her badly. "Don't let up." Relentlessly the two attacked him, trying to drive him into a corner, and for the most part he let them. His trumps were all simply overkill for who he was facing, and it was even more exciting to watch them improve and adapt to his tactics. And Sasuke. The boy exceeded all expectations and then some. Everything he did had a level of polish to it found in few shinobi regardless of their age. A fully matured Sharingan at his age was extremely rare as it was, but add to it the skills, intellect, and pure strength the boy wielded, well. There was no doubt Sasuke was Itachi's brother. However, as was inevitable, the Sannin could not be stopped from gaining ground on them. The battle followed his whims, and Orochimaru has always been a man with questions that demanded answers. Making a decision, he baited Sakura into a haymaker which he slid under by a hair. Without a moment for her to react he sent 3 vicious punches into her side, feeling the ribs there crack, following up by grabbing her from behind and biting her neck. "Let's see if you can handle this, girl." Sakura's shout of pain for the broken ribs soon turned into a scream as the seal was applied before convulsing as it began penetrating her chakra network. Orochimaru simply tossed her aside to the ground where she twitched, clutching her neck. Sakura. Not strong enough to protect her, unfortunately, Orochimaru taunted. Sasuke was clearly much more connected to his team than reported, but he was young and more importantly he was an Uchiha. There had never been one who didn't value power above all else. Inevitably they all fell to the same trap. Sasuke's hand went to a scroll at his waist, snapping it open and gripping the odachi that appeared from it. "Kabuto, you are utterly useless as a spy." Orochimaru pulled a kunai, using it to parry a stab at his head that fluidly turned into dozens of near-invisible slashes. He dodged most by backpedaling, still using the kunai to keep himself from harm before. The thing shattered from the fierce onslaught. All at once Sasuke broke away, retreating to grab his teammate and bring her to the edge of the clearing before stepping forward once more, ready to defend her. Orochimaru debated revealing his own sword and testing the boy's skills further but didn't get the chance as an orange missile suddenly landed in the space between them. An orange missile with blonde hair and a bubbling chakra aura of a sinister red. "Sasuke, what happened?" He bit her in the neck. She's alive, but I don't know what he did. Curse seal. But on Sakura? What did you do to her? Naruto demanded as Sasuke joined his side. Was that a sword? Where did he get it from? A gift, if she can survive, Orochimaru said. It's unlikely though. Rage filled his heart and pumped through his blood. I'm gonna kill you. It was a promise. Maybe not this day. Maybe not the next time either, but in his mind it was a foregone conclusion. Orochimaru simply smiled thinly. You can try. Sakura was in pain. An unworldly amount of pain. She was pissed at herself, mainly for believing that Orochimaru wouldn't want to put the seal on anyone but Sasuke. He'd sent the Sound Genin to test him after all, not someone else. She also shouldn't have let herself be caught like that. It just showed that she needed to get back to her prime as soon as possible. However, one might be surprised to find that she was also happy. Immensely so. I got the seal. True, there was nothing stopping Orochimaru from trying it a second time, but the surprise was gone. Sasuke and Naruto would avoid it. And she would survive this curse. The one thing that set her apart from so many others was her fine control. The way she spent every moment of her life as a shinobi refining and refining and refining some more. Chakra was hers to command, and command it she would. Unknown to the three fighting in the clearing, the cursed seal began spreading through the girl's chakra network faster. 2 times faster. 5 times faster. 10 times faster. 100 times faster. Sasuke grit his teeth as he intercepted another strike from the Kusanagi sword, running chakra through the blade to keep it from being cleaved through. There was no way the sword would survive much more of this. It wasn't built to handle chakra, nor to be matched against such a peerless blade. He was managing though, as he wasn't the only focus Orochimaru had to contend with. Great red claws of searing chakra left streaks in his vision as Naruto unleashed his tenant's power. The incredible destructive nature was as surprising as ever, especially with the lack of even a single formed tail. It seemed as if Orochimaru was becoming increasingly frustrated with how little effect he was having on the blonde genin who healed any and all damage he took without blinking. Naruto, however, was amazingly level-headed despite clearly being enraged. Clones swarmed Orochimaru to great effect, always. Ready to substitute the original away when the Sannin tried to seal him. Once more he cursed at his inability to use any of his stronger moves for the sake of secrecy. True, even if he were able to somehow circumvent all of Orochimaru's safeguards against death and kill him here, it wouldn't be worth exposing himself, but running a Chidori through the guy's head would be extremely cathartic in its own way. Naruto, he snapped, going through hand signs. Give me a boost. 2 of the clones moved to his side and made identical hand signs. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Futon, Detapa. A firestorm raced across the clearing, incinerating everything in its path and then some, swallowing Orochimaru instantly. Sasuke cut the chakra to the technique and it petered out, leaving a great deal of dust and smoke in the air, but that cleared quickly to reveal a tightly coiled snake which soon burst into smoke, the Sannin unharmed at the center. Wind and fire, a dangerous combination, Orochimaru stated. If you're willing to go that far, then you'll understand if I dash. He paused, eyes widening and seeming to unfocus. It took Sasuke a second to realize that he was looking at something behind them. Discipline stopped him from doing the same, but Naruto's voice caught his attention just as strongly. Sakura? Unable to resist, he turned, his Sharingan capturing the scene in an instant. Sakura was pushing herself to her feet. Her face was shadowed by her hair, her posture was slumped as though trying to regain a sort of balance from being overburdened. Her skin was gray. A sense of alarm rose up in him as he looked for the telltale black markings only to realize there were none, even though they should be obvious on her skin. Her shirt pushed up and a ripping sound was heard as a thick tail hit the ground behind her. Her hair became more vibrantly pink and wild, and pieces of brown stone seemed to sprout across her body in various places. Joints, knuckles, shoulders, and her tail suddenly looked far more lethal. She straightened with a stretch, like she'd just been napping, and turned to face them. Angled black markings on her cheeks and forehead were only outdone by eyes that were now black and green. Level 2? She just got the seal a few minutes ago. Wa, Sakura. Naruto's voice was one of clear panic. Orochimaru, you bastard. What did you do? Amazing. The Sannin, for once, did nothing to hide the genuine glee in his voice. Team 7. You are all worth keeping an eye on. I think it's finally time for me to take my leave. Seek me out if you survive. There is no end to the things I can give you. With that he sank into the ground like it was water. Or at least he tried to. Just as his head was about to disappear, he halted suddenly. Sakura stood above him, a hand fisted in his hair. Where the fuck do you think you're going? She said in a neutral voice. Her other fist drew back high and was brought down with all the force of a mountain. Zabuza Momochi let out a rough sigh as he looked at the clock for the 8th time in the last 10 minutes. The exam had barely started an hour ago and he was already bored out of his mind. He was the kami-damned demon of the mist. He was supposed to be out there beheading bingo book targets, not babysitting brats. Knowing May though, she'd have him taking care of actual babies next if he pissed her off again. A dull thud drew his attention to his immediate left where a beer can had been placed at arm's reach. All right there, Jonin-san. A Konoha Jonin was standing nearby, smiling down at where he sat. A very recognizable, one-eyed Jonin. Copy Kakashi, what do you want? Ma, is it wrong to share a drink with a fellow Jonin? He said cheerily, taking the seat across from him much to his annoyance. Besides, if you keep staring at the clock it might actually stop moving. Zabuza just responded with a grunt, opening the beer and taking a swig. Passable. Not poisoned, of course. You know, we were pretty surprised to see you as the sensei coming with the Kiri squad. Not just because last I heard you were a missing nin. Zabuza let out a sound that was closer to a growl than anything. What of it? Just wondering what you must have done to piss off the Mizukage so much she made you a babysitter. He couldn't help laughing at that. Trust the guy with one visible eye to see right through him. Ao was a bastard like that too. Ha, enough. After this nonsense is over it's back to business. Why are you stuck with brats? It was a genuine question. Hatake Kakashi was one of the strongest shinobi Konoha had. No matter how he looked at it, having him as a sensei was just a waste of resources. It's a Konoha mindset, you wouldn't understand, Kakashi said with a shrug. This mother, would you two give it a rest? A red-eyed, irritated genjutsu specialist joined them, her eyes lingering on Zabuza before resting on Kakashi. Stop causing trouble, Kakashi. Peace, Kurenai. The booming voice was none other than the passionate leader of Team 9. There's no harm with friendly banter. Especially if it leads to a youthful challenge. Did someone say challenge? Said another one. The Hokage's son. I've got some extra cash from my last mission and I'm in a betting mood today. We haven't even talked about bets for who makes it through the forest. Zabuza had to force himself from reacting as he was surrounded and consequently included in this friend group's hangout. Somehow he couldn't help but feel like this was all part of May's plan to torture him. If so, it was working. Suddenly, every person in the room stilled as a small tremor passed under their feet. Everyone felt that, right? Asuna asked in confusion. Zabuza just frowned. What the hell was going on in that forest? Back in the forest of death, the two boys of Team 7 extricated themselves from a large amount of upturned dirt, rock, and tree roots that used to be the fairly spacious clearing they'd been fighting the snake Sannin. Their third member stood amidst it all in a sizable crater, specks of dirt and rock still falling from the hand she used to destroy the area, her tail idly sweeping from side to side. As they approached, Naruto was the first to speak. "Ah. Sakura. In your hand." The pinkette blinked before raising her still clenched fist to eye level, bringing with it what could only be described as an Orochimaru rubber mask, complete with hair, with an expression of abject horror on it. It sagged as she gave it a small shake, making a disturbing flapping sound as it moved around. "Tsk, he got away," she tooted. Scowling at the shed head, she tossed it aside without a second glance. "Oh man, that is not going to leave my mind for a while," Naruto said with a shudder. "Sakura, are you feeling okay?" Sasuke asked hesitantly. He knew better than anyone what it was like to have the curse seal messing with your mind, and Sakura was way too strong like this to not have him worried. "Pretty good actually," she said, looking at her hands in interest. "Wait. Maybe not so good." Her body suddenly began to revert to its original form, natural colors returning, the tail receding, and the rocky spines actually dropping off altogether, becoming granular dust that dispersed in the air before even reaching the ground. Sasuke caught her before she dropped more than an inch, grunting in spite of himself as he took on her dead weight. "Kami, she's heavy. I didn't realize she was built so solidly, you'd never guess from how she looks. Naruto, scout the area for a place we can rest. Let's give this place some distance," he added, hoisting the girl up. The blonde nodded only to go wide-eyed as the shifting fabric of Sakura's sleeveless dress revealed a troubling matter. Sasuke noticed the expression immediately. "What?" "Tail ripped her shorts and, tie up her dress so it won't show anything while we move," he said with a sigh. "Relax, she won't kill you." "Probably." Task done, Team 7 relocated deeper into the forest, moving quickly and quietly for nearly 20 minutes before Naruto signaled them to stop. "There isn't much around here, we should be good." The two set up a small camp contained in the gnarled roots of one of the massive trees. Sakura was still unconscious, but seemed to be sleeping more than anything. Sasuke and Naruto sat across from one another with a pack of dried meat between them. Silence stretched for some time. "So?" Sasuke looked up from the kunai he'd been fiddling with an apprehensive-looking Naruto. "You're probably wondering what all that red chakra from earlier was about," he said slowly. "It crossed my mind once or twice," Sasuke said with a small nod. "Did you want to talk about it?" Yeah." Naruto drew a deep breath to steady himself before forging ahead. "You know how we were talking about Jinchuriki before? I'm Konoha's." Silence. Sasuke just stared, unable to say anything. "He really told me." Being a Jinchuriki had always weighed heavy on Naruto's shoulders. Though over time they'd all found out one way or another, it was never by his choosing. Being the host of the Kyuubi truly was Naruto's darkest secret in so many ways. And he just told him. A thick feeling of disgust boiled up from within his gut. When all was said and done, he'd barely made much effort to do things differently this time around. Mainly he just had a different state of mind. One where he simply enjoyed being with his team. With his family. He made peace with his past mistakes and did what he could to be better, but to see the world of difference such a small thing could accomplish in front of him. How could I have been so blind? So foolish. Why yeah, I know it's probably pretty shocking Naruto. The seriousness of his voice nearly caused the blonde to start. He watched with no small amount of nervousness as Sasuke cleared his throat and gave him a half smile. "I am glad we are friends." Slowly, Naruto's expression softened and matched him grin for grin. "Besides, I've known for years." "What?" Elsewhere XXX the sole team of genin from the Sound Village moved slowly through the thick undergrowth of the forest. They'd been tree hopping recently, but it appeared the upper levels of this section of the forest were home to a vast number of giant spiders that didn't like being near the ground. You know, because of all the other horrible stuff that lived there and liked to eat spiders. This place fucking sucks, said Zaku, blasting away another bramble-filled shrub with an outstretched hand. Still better than the base, Kin grumbled. Don't you ever get tired of complaining? Dosu asked automatically, not even looking back at the two who followed him. We have a mission to complete, it's as simple as that. Well then, great leader, could you point us in the direction of the Uchiha? Zaku snarled sarcastically. And not one of those monster bears? Because hadn't that sucked when they stumbled onto a sleeping one? He is presently in that direction, though they will likely move soon. The three genin froze, gut sinking to the depths of the ocean as they instantly recognized the voice now speaking. Turning as one, they found themselves face to face with their leader, standing there as if he'd been walking with them all along. They stared. And stared. "Oh Orochimaru-sama," Kin stammered out. "Which way?" Calmly the Sannin pointed, getting a hasty bow and thank you out of her and Dosu, who jumped at the chance to avert their gaze naturally. Zaku on the other hand couldn't hold it any longer. "Why are you bald? So you've been learning how to use a sword on your own this whole time?" "Mostly on my own, yeah. It's pretty useful. I'll say, you should give me some tips sometime." "Sure, you taught me the clone after all." Naruto and Sasuke paused as Sakura shifted in her sleep, sparing her a glance each. "We shouldn't just sit around," Naruto said with a sigh. "I've got clones all over, but we can't rely on them for everything." "We actually could," Sasuke said, drawing a chuckle from the blonde, "but I agree. Can I leave you to keep Sakura safe?" It was less of a question of his ability, and more asking about going out on his own. "Of course. Let me update you before you go." A few minutes was dedicated to creating and dismissing clones, one to get the message to all the scouting clones, then a series of updates as each did the same, before he briefly relayed general location and status of each team that had been found and was presently being tracked. In other words, all of them. Sasuke took a few seconds to make sure he was all together, before nodding and vanishing in a shunshin. "Damn, this team is cool," Naruto mused, leaning back on his arms. He was feeling great, mainly because talking to Sasuke about his being a Jinchuriki had gone so well. Now he'd see what Sakura thought as well, but a part of him just couldn't be worried anymore. Before it felt impossible that anyone could take the news well. No matter what the evidence, it just didn't seem real. That notion had been completely shattered by Sasuke, and he couldn't be more grateful. Now we wait. If anyone were to be asked, they'd probably say that Naruto couldn't sit still or pay attention to one thing for very long. This actually couldn't be further from the truth. When you could multitask like he could, then you simply just paid attention to everything. He could comfortably relax because there were dozens of him still doing stuff at the same time. Besides, he could always just hang out with his favorite furry friend if he really got bored. Sasuke moved through the forest at a speed no genin or chunin could follow. From what Naruto had just relayed to him, the team he was currently making a beeline to was not faring too well. Karen was a force to be reckoned with when she'd been a part of his team, but by her own admission years later the chunin exams had nearly been her death several times over, the time he'd saved her notwithstanding. Naruto was tracking the team, but he wouldn't step in for anyone he didn't know if they were in danger. Heck, this Naruto was probably sooner to take out a team if he thought it was a good idea. He could make serious decisions if needed, and was surprisingly strategic when pressed. He'll wonder why I went for this team, but that's easy enough to explain away. Besides, the moment he realizes she's an Uzumaki, Kusa will probably have to bring an actual army to take her away. When he'd known her, and years later, Karen hadn't ever really been interested in connecting with his blonde friend. Her heart had already closed to such a thing in her life taking root. After everything she experienced, there was no reason to try and be someone she once was. Now, Sasuke couldn't help but want to give her the chance she never had. The chance that he somehow did get. It was near dark when he finally caught up to Karen's team. They'd been cutting a zigzag path through the forest, pushed and pulled by random dangers. The three members were crowded around a small campfire that was fairly well concealed from the surrounding area. He could make out the raised voices of angry boys. Her teammates were arguing. "Hey, Sasuke." He didn't react as Naruto dropped onto the branch next to him. "Hey. Didn't think you'd head out this way," the clone said, the question clear in his voice. "Something I wanted to investigate, not mission-related." "I'll tell you about it later," Sasuke added, getting a shrug out of the blonde. "Sure, need help?" "Just info." "What can you tell me about these three?" he asked. "They're not that good," Naruto said with a weak half grin. "The guys keep arguing but both boss the girl around and the team leader is a dick. Asshole even bit her once and she didn't do a thing about it. I feel kinda bad about it but I doubt they'll make it another day. There's a big-ass bear in the area that's already killed a team. Oh, and they have the same scroll we started with, otherwise I would have taken it. Alright, I'll take over for this group then, they won't be around for much longer. Move closer to the tower?" "That's fine, it's been a dull day here," he agreed. "See ya." With that the blonde leaped from the branch and faded into the darkness. The Kusa team was still oblivious to his presence, and still arguing from the sound of it. Karen appeared to be trying to sleep but even at this distance his Sharingan could make out the tense expression in her face as she stared into the night. Letting out the smallest of breaths, the young Uchiha settled down for a rest, knowing his goal was now in sight. All he had to do was be patient. Naruto let out a contemplative hum as the memories of a clone rejoined his mind. Sasuke was watching the Kusa team. What was he looking into, he wondered. He was satisfied with the call the clone made though. It was him after all, why wouldn't he be? Now he was presently getting water from a nearby source at the request of a finally conscious Sakura who also wanted some privacy to fix her wardrobe malfunction, much to her irritated embarrassment. Fortunately she hadn't taken a swing at him for getting an eyeful earlier but the way she glared at him when he returned with the water clearly said he was on thin ice in that regard. "I know this Sakura is 1,000 times better than the other one but Kami she's that many times scarier too." "Got the water," he said, unnecessarily announcing his arrival. "Thanks, now come eat." Rations from a storage seal. Definitely not his favorite but more than enough to meet their needs. It would only be a few days at most anyway. "How are you feeling?" he asked, joining her at their light source, a small stick that glowed when bent and shaken. They didn't need much light to operate. So it was enough, even in such a dark place like the Forest of Death. "Better." "Really," she added, not even needing to look up to see his skeptical face. "The seal shouldn't be a problem. It's just chakra after all. My whole clan just rolled over in their graves. Seals are just chakra, what a statement." "Yeah, but..." She'd said as much earlier and he believed her just as little now as he did then. He'd seen what the thing did to Sasuke, though admittedly the other Sasuke was not really in control of anything. "Naruto, if I promise to let Kakashi-sensei take a look at it when we finish this will you let it go?" "Yeah, I will," he said, relieved. Kakashi knew the danger from that seal. The more eyes on her for it the better. "I'm sorry Sakura, I'm just..." "I know, I'm glad I have such a good teammate to look out for me," she said with a warm smile. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, embarrassed in spite of himself. "Anyway, you said you wanted to tell me something?" "Oh, yeah." Naruto cleared his throat, pushing ahead and remembering what had happened earlier. "When you, woke up," he made a face at the lack of a better phrase, "I was using some red chakra, I'm not sure if you noticed." "I did. Of course. I looked like that because I was using chakra from the Kyuubi. I'm his host. I'm Konoha's Jinchuriki. Sakura's expression wasn't easy to make out in the low light, but it seemed neutral. That's. Why are you telling me? It was odd, the tone her voice carried. Well, you're my friend and my teammate and I just wanted you to know, he said honestly, still unsure how to read her reaction. She clearly wasn't scared, but panic struck him as the girl drew her legs to her chest with a loud tearful sniff, immediately causing him to stammer out what he hoped was something consoling. What he didn't know was that Sakura was going through something Sasuke had as well some hours earlier. A moment of happiness and also regret. He had been her teammate for more than a decade. He'd genuinely been her friend, and for years even tried convincing her to go on a date with him. Heck, she'd even humored him once, years after the war ended. Yet, in all that time everything she knew about him was discovered. Happenstance. Accidental or intentional, outside of his control. Here he was, just handing her his most personal secret because he wanted to. It made her want to puke. Instead she cried. For the friend she never deserved and she'd never get to apologize to. Instead she'd just be better. For the friend who was going through crisis just because he didn't know if he'd get mauled for trying to pat her to calm her down. She reached up and pulled his hand atop her head, smiling at him through a watery gaze. Sorry, I'm fine now. Thank you. Naruto's brain was doing gymnastics trying to understand all the underlying messages that had just passed, but her smile and soft hold on his hand calmed the storm. As long as you're fine, he ended up settling with, withdrawing to his seat. I was afraid I made you cry 'cause of what I said. You did, actually, Sakura openly admitted, but for a different reason. You being a Jinchuriki doesn't bother me at all.